Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this second executive morning brief from us at CBS Executive. My name is Tobias, and I am a community director at CBS Executive. With me today, I have Andreas and Ingrid. I'll give you guys a proper introduction in a minute once I've done the introductory stuff here. First up to say is that sustainable leadership and transformation are very much a headline for us here at CBS Executive in 2024, and it obviously is because we believe that this is and increasingly will be a absolute crucial task for leaders across the entire business world and public sector to drive the transition towards more sustainable businesses. Now, I'll do some practical stuff and introduce the overall topic of today, and then I'll hand it over to Andreas and Ingrid, following a brief word cloud session in Slido. And I just have the practical stuff. We are quite a few gathered here today, so we have chosen to use the Zoom webinar function. That means that you are per default silenced. You will, however, be able to interact, and we very much hope that you will engage through the Zoom chat function later in the session. I also have to say that we are recording the session today, and that we will send a link to all signups following the session so that you'll be able to revert back and have a look at the discussion at a later point. Next slide, please. Now, the topic of today's session, we have tried to describe in these three overall questions. Do you have the right sustainability governance model to respond to stakeholder needs? How you can anchor sustainability discussions within top management, and how the new EU sustainability regulations, which Andreas just told me, one of them is in a meeting today in Brussels. How will they affect sustainability governance in your organization? Now, obviously, building sustainability governance and anchoring any sort of transformational topic in a top management setting are topics worthy of several books. So we won't be able to exhaustively cover them today. We do hope, however, that the coming discussions will provide some new ideas, new perspectives that you can use in your everyday life. We have these sessions as part of community building on the sustainability area. We got further sessions coming up. I'll give you an introduction to those at the end of today's session. But we hope very much that we inspire and give you an appetite for showing up at coming sessions as well. Now, as I said, today with me is Ingrid Reumert, SVP Global Stakeholder Relations and part of the executive management team at Ørsted. Ingrid has a background from the building industry and from the European Parliament, and is further an adjunct professor here with us at Copenhagen Business School. Also with us is you, Andreas, Professor of Business and Society at CBS's Center for Sustainability. Andreas has been published in several top-tier international journals and has further been rewarded for his teaching, both with us here at CBS Executive Function and further executive education at CBS. That was more or less what I had to say introductory. Next slide coming up is a Slido word cloud. You can access it through your phone by simply using the QR code on the screen, or you can go to slido.com and provide the code provided on the slide. The question that we would like you to answer through Slido, and please feel free to dig into it, is what is the biggest hurdle to fully integrate sustainability into leadership priorities? And Andreas, as soon as people find their way into this and the word cloud starts emerging, I will hand it over to you. Already a pattern showing up, I'd say.
The pattern is the word lag.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for engaging, everybody. Andreas, over to you to
Yes.
provide the next part of the session.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Tobias. Welcome everybody. It's great to have you all here, and please keep on typing, because this is what Ingrid and I can also use in our discussion. Very warm welcome to you, Ingrid. Good to have you on this executive morning brief here. And while some of the participants are actually still typing and are still filling this out, let me maybe start with the obvious question today. 28th of February, the EU Council will probably vote today on the CSDDD, the COREPER, the Committee of Permanent Representatives. Ingrid, what do you think about the CSDDD? I mean, obviously we need it, but what is your take on this new directive? Where do you see the discussion going?
So thank you very much for that, Andreas, and good morning, good day to all of you, and thank you for inviting me here. Looking forward to some great sustainability discussions. But you are absolutely right. Today is an important day in the EU sustainability journey, because as you say, we have the vote in the COREPER 1 meeting just before lunch, we believe. So the CSRDD, I think a lot of you know, it's been long term in the making. It focuses on the human rights and the environmental protection, but with a large focus on human rights obligations. And I think what is also maybe one of the reasons why it's gotten stuck, and that there was the quite unprecedented event here a few days ago, where the trilogue discussions didn't actually move forward, is because it of course imposes quite some requirements on companies, not only on their own human rights, or you could say practices, but also actually for the entire value chain. So it's actually quite wide. And there are specific, you have to do preventive action plans, you have to live up to different compliance, etc. And we believe from an Ørsted perspective, and I believe that this is definitely the right way to go for Europe, for sure. And that good human rights practices also goes very well in hand, of course, with the sustainability leadership in general, but also just good business conduct. So we hope very much that it will be adopted today, but it is, you could say, another of those key discussions on when is it too much? Is it too much regulation? Is it too heavy on industry? Does it make European industry anti-competitive compared to other parts of the world? It's the same discussion that we have seen also with the CSRD directive as well. And I'm sure we will see that same discussion popping up with other directives that we will have coming throughout the rest of the decade, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed, Ingrid, on this very topical reflection to start with. And I now want to move towards today's topic, which is sustainability governance. And your role at Ørsted actually is very much also around stakeholder relations. And you know, I was wondering, we should maybe start reflecting on what determines whether you have the right sustainability governance model to actually respond to stakeholder needs. Strictly speaking, there are two types of models on a continuum, right? You can organize sustainability in a quite centralized way in an organization. You know, you have a central sustainability unit, you keep things tight, or you have a more decentralized approach where you push quite a bit of the responsibilities down towards the business units and also other units in the organization. So I see these as the end of the continuum. But Ingrid, what do you think needs to be considered when we talk about sustainability governance, and this governance really being designed in a way that you can respond actually to the needs and claims of stakeholders?
Yeah, and it's an excellent question, Andreas. And I would approach it from starting to look from the outside. You could say, what is it that is happening at the moment in the outside world around sustainability? And that could, of course, be an event or a discussion in itself. But just very briefly, I think what we are seeing is that a number of themes are emerging at the same time. And I would just mention the usual three. The climate, the nature, and the people topic. And there are our understanding of them not being siloed, but highly interdependent, I think is increasing. That is at the core of many discussions at the moment. So you could say with that, the complexity is rising. And then I would say that the second big trend, and maybe just leaving the reporting disclosure requirements, we will get back to it, but the second big trend I believe we're seeing is that, unfortunately, I think that the transition that we're all towards a more sustainable society is not happening as fast as we maybe thought a few years ago, and that many of us would have liked. And that's both in terms of arriving at the Paris Agreement and at the 1.5 degree scenario. It's around the whole challenge we have with biodiversity, just transition, etc. And also just for within our area in Ørsted, we can see that the green transition, so the transition to a green energy system, is just happening much slower than we thought just 2 years ago. So I think if you take those two, the high degree of interdependence and more issues than just, you could say, climate, and at the same time a transition that is happening slower, that would be, for me, kind of the context that you're operating in as a company. And then you've got all, of course, the legislative reporting requirements. And to me, that means that you need to find a balance between having maybe a smaller central function, but then really pushing sustainability out into the business. Because it is the business units and even also further, of course, into the whole value chain of a company where the real action needs to take place. And if there's one, you could say, negative challenge, I think, with all reporting that we've gone based on the Green Deal in Europe, but also, of course, in other geographies that is coming through companies or towards companies at the moment, is that within a lot of companies, this is where the focus is at the moment. It's getting the reporting structure right. And that takes, of course, a lot of energy and a lot of focus. And it is for sure the right thing to do. You will not hear me at all be against the CSRD or taxonomy at all. However, we risk us not having enough focus on actually delivering the progress. So the tangible action that needs to take us towards living up to those commitments, whether it's the science-based or whatever it is. And for that to happen, you need to have the business line, the business units, the different geographies, markets, all the parts of the business activated. So I would say that the model should be more focused on delivery throughout the company, but then you still need a smaller functions in a group sustainability function where you've got, of course, the expertise, the subject matter expertise, and then very much the finance department, which is increasingly taking over responsibility for all the reporting, assurance, disclosure, etc.
And that's a really interesting point. And just to the audience here, please ask questions along the way, right? We have this Q&A, we have this Q&A function here, so you can ask questions on what Ingrid and I are discussing, but also on the CSDDD if you have anything there. So please ask questions along the way, and we will then pick them up. And Ingrid, I wanted to come back to this because we also have, as one of the questions here, what are the implications of the EU sustainability regulations on sustainability governance? And what you say, of course, is something that we really see in quite a bit of organizations, right? Sustainability, at least the disclosure, is moving more towards finance, also because of the taxonomy, right? You have CapEx, OpEx data that is necessary, and naturally that rests with finance. provocative hypothesis from my end. Will we see maybe 5 years down the road, will we see finance departments being the ones who spearhead sustainability reporting, maybe just next to regular financial reporting?
In some way, then I'll give a provocative reply to that. I would say I would hope so. I would hope so, because we need to stop seeing sustainability reporting as something completely different or outside the financial reporting. To me, it has to be fully integrated and has to be lifted to the same level and taken as seriously as we do with our financial reporting. And that is both, of course, toward investors or shareholders, stakeholders, but also internally, of course, towards employees, top management, etc. So I'm a very strong proponent for finance taking the responsibility of reporting, assurance, compliance, etc. Also because our good finance colleagues, they know how to drive this. They've got the systems in place, the software in place, the structure in place. They're working with, they know what assurance is about and isn't about. They've got all the processes, etc. So to me, having the data reporting anchored within the finance is really strong, because you get a strong, you could say, train that can drive that throughout the business. And as everyone knows, when finance knocks on your door and needs data or need to comply with something, most part of the company, of course, listen and do as they're required. But I think there will always, of course, still be a role for global sustainability, because global sustainability to me is more a muscle that is driving the action, together with, of course, the business units, who delivers expertise, can be a catalyst, who has oversight, who can do top management, also reporting, and then very importantly, the global sustainability brings in the outside view. Because a lot of the colleagues in global sustainability would sit in all kinds of external networks, discussions in different groups, and knows what is happening out there in the sustainability, you could say, substance field.
Yeah. And that is, of course, really interesting, right? To kind of see, okay, reporting that traditionally rested with the sustainability functions is now moving more over to finance, also because of assurance that is coming with the CSRD. But then, of course, the question is, what does this do to sustainability units, right? I recently met with someone and she said, you know what? We might run into a situation where sustainability units might have a small identity crisis, and they need to go through this identity crisis, right? Because one of their traditional tasks is taking from them, and they need to reorient themselves, as you say, around kind of more coordination, oversight, top management engagement, which is a bit of a different agenda. What would you say about this kind of identity crisis argument?
Yes, no, I think you're right. It's been a core task since the CSR days, you could say, right? Doing the CSR reporting was resting with sustainability. But to me, there is a extremely important, and maybe also depending, of course, on profile and passion, etc., maybe even more interesting task which is lying ahead, which is to get the business actually to deliver on the commitments. And not just because we need to deliver on a commitment, that's of course important, but to really work with in an integrated way, talk about business models, stakeholder outreach, work also, I think, and we can maybe get into that if you like, but I think another perspective that's opening up for group sustainability is work much more together with the regulatory colleagues, the whole advocacy agenda as well, where I think you say old CSR departments were focused very inward, and not having being part of the voice of the company externally, asking for progress and for change. So to me, yes, maybe there is an important task that is being transferred to finance, but there are a lot of other and maybe even more exciting and important tasks out there that I think the group sustainability team need to grab. That has to be a conscious move, and also, of course, be clear to the business what is the value of delivering.
Yeah. One of the questions was also around how to anchor sustainability discussions within top management, and our little poll here also, or our word cloud, also aimed at that, and I took a screenshot of it. And when I look at it, you know, it's quite a bit around lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. So also some say lack of commitment. Where would you say, generally speaking, right? Do we stand on this? Whenever you start to engage really with the C-suite, the board, on these kind of topics, is broadly speaking, if you really look at many companies here, not necessarily Ørsted, but if you look at many companies, is lack of knowledge, lack of understanding a barrier we need to take seriously?
Oh, I think it is still there. The lack of, I would say, more in-depth understanding. I think everyone has understood, just being a citizen, right, living in our time. Everyone knows about climate change, about nature, and about the people issues. So I think everyone understands it's an important agenda. But I think what is necessary is a little bit more in-depth knowledge of what does it actually mean. And you could maybe make the parallel to a decade ago where everyone was talking about digitalization, right? That the top management of all companies had to suddenly understand what was digital and what could it do for your company. And that didn't mean that everyone had to be savvy within IT or digital, but you had to have the understanding what can this new revolution do for our company, what opportunities and risks does it bring. And to me, this is the parallel. You don't have to have a board of directors or top management that are experts. That's why you've got the group sustainability team, by the way. But you need to have an understanding of the key topics that are being discussed, key risks and opportunities, and for that you need a group sustainability team that helps you with that surfacing that to the top management, for sure.
Yeah. And definitely that is one of the key challenges also on the board level. I'm currently also conducting quite a bit of research on how boards behave, and what I see is I would describe it as this high level of awareness, also rather high level actually of commitment. But when it comes to actually knowledge, as you say, the more fine-grained knowledge, right, then there are often problems. And things start actually with concepts like double materiality, right? What does that mean really for a company? So we still have a lot of catching up to do, and I want to draw also on some of the questions now, because they actually tie in very nicely into what we have discussed here. And one of the questions was, how would you describe the role of boards in this transition? And given that they could have a significant impact, are they using their lever enough? So are they making enough of a difference yet?
I think there's a lot that boards still can do, for sure. And I'm just talking in very generic terms. It's both about getting the right expertise into boards. I still think there's been a lot of talk about sustainability expertise in the boards, and that's one of you. I know you know a lot about that also, Andreas, for sure. And you can do that in different ways, but I still don't think that we have seen that to the extent necessary, both lifting the general knowledge level, but also getting in people who know about sustainability, looking for that as a specific profile, maybe together with other things. And the reason why the boards are so important, of course, together with executive management, is that this is a massive leadership change for most companies. And there is never a good time in any company's life to drive through massive transformations, because you're always busy with other stuff, right? You always have other issues that you have to deal with, your profitability or your value chain or whatever. So there's never a good time to start this. So if you wait for the right time, it will never happen. And that's why you need the board and executive management to say it's not about finding the time for sustainability. This is something we do as part of our business all the time. Also when it's difficult and we are in a crisis or we've got other issues, we cannot take the foot off the pedal for 3 years and then wait for better times, and then we will start our sustainability work. And by the way, we're very close to 2030 now. A lot of companies have 2030 goals.
Yeah.
So I think in some companies we're also starting to feel the heat. It was easy back early in the decade to set a target that was 10 years ahead, but now 2030 is coming up very close. So I think it's extremely important that the board and the executive management is so focused.
Just sticking very briefly to boards, because one of the questions that usually pops up is, should we form a committee on the board level, right? I mean, it's one of the most discussed when you look at this debate, sustainability and boards and senior leaders. The question is always, do we need a board level committee? And then there are those who say, yes, we do, because this gives it the attention, and the others say, no, please don't, because then you just have a small group of people being engaged with this. What's your take on it?
I'm in the latter group. I'm in the please don't make a sustainability board committee, please.
Okay. Why?
Yes, I believe that the audit and risk committee has got an important role with regards to the sustainable reporting. Like we spoke, just like they've got for the financial reporting and financial risk, they've got that. So the risk and reporting compliance part, I think that goes in many companies, should go in many companies through the audit and risk committee and then into the board. But I think that you need also back to the whole knowledge, understanding, education, and not least commitment and accountability of the board. You need to have those discussions in the board for everyone to hear, to listen, to feel committed, and to of course also learn and give their input, and also voice if they disagree. Because, you know, also in the executive management, it's the same. If you have disagreement in the organization, that becomes blockers when you then try to have action. Because that filters down through the line, you could say, and then it's very difficult to deliver action within sustainability, because it's such a truly integrated discipline that you need many parts of the organization to work together.
And I also heard, I mean, on the committee thing, I once heard somebody say, look, we have a sustainability committee on the board, but there's a problem. And this is adverse selection. Because all the sustainability fans on the board self-selected into this committee, so you had a bit of a kind of lack of balance actually in it, which I found really interesting to hear. It was an American company, but I think still applicable in terms of general knowledge. Let's go to a question by Morten.
It's about the biases. It's a little bit like when you have a committee for gender diversity and you only have women, right? It's the same kind of logic.
Exactly. Diversity is more than just the gender diversity. Morten asked, I mean, there are big geographical differences that sometimes make it difficult across the organization to really ensure kind of alignment around sustainability. Also with Ørsted, I mean, you are rather internationally active, right? I mean, how do you cope with these kind of challenges that, of course, in different countries, maybe you have different needs, and also business units might respond differently to local needs?
Yes. Oh, it's a crucial point. So thank you for that question. And it goes back also to the stakeholder angle that we had a little bit in the beginning, because of course those who are in most contact and probably understand most the stakeholder needs are the ones who are closest to them, right? So that is different, of course, from market to market and geography to geography. What are the key concerns? So for example, taking Ørsted as an example, and going back to the three themes that I mentioned in the beginning with climate, nature, and people, or just transition. For sure, if you go to the US, the just transition piece part of sustainability is more important than the climate change part. Now I'm just talking very generic terms. Whereas in Europe, we still focus more on the green transition and climate and less on the just transition, right? And so I think, and you could of course make that more granular. So I think you need, as a company, of course, to have your overall, you could say, corporate themes and your way of working and your compliance, and that has to be anchored, of course, with the top management, and you could have a whole discussion around committee structure. But then it has to cater, of course, also for local needs, because if not, you don't drive the business value out of it either, and it becomes too much one size fits all. So you need to have a discussion of, where are the areas where you can kind of diversify, where you can say, okay, here we don't push as hard in this geography for this topic. However, we have this really important issue around just transition, and this is where we move forward. So I think you need some flexibility across geographies. And then, of course, with the new EU legislation, you also know, Andreas, some of it, a lot of it goes outside, of course, EU boundaries. So that is an exercise in itself. We've had to explain to our American colleagues why some of their investments in the state of Texas have to live up to the EU taxonomy, right?
Which is difficult, let's face it.
To get that through, but yes, that is the obligation that we have.
Then I can just bring in another question here, and we have a lot of questions. So thank you all for sending these. How will Ørsted prepare for the implementation of the CSDDD? Because we were just talking about kind of because the CSDDD takes a value chain approach, right? And this is by definition for most companies a global approach. So how do you prepare for the implications? Maybe also in terms of governance and organizationally speaking.
Yes. So we have been preparing for quite a while, expecting this to come through. We have our central part of the group sustainability team is a due diligence team that has been doing this preparatory work. So we have a specific team working on due diligence, which is already today working very closely together with the business, very much in a business partnering, business support role. So of course we have tried to anticipate what is going to come out through the directive. With the preventive action plans, also of course the grievance mechanisms and all that, seeing what is going to come out, but also trying to couple that with a business partnering role. So it's not just a question of the team coming out, this is what you have to live up to, and now and this is a compliance, and there will be auditing, etc. But also being very much a catalyst and being in the different, very concrete discussions of should we go with this partner or that partner? Is there a challenge with this supplier or with that supplier? And then, of course, also working together with other parts of the business who are already have feet on the ground, because that's important for the due diligence team as well. And they're often small teams, so they cannot travel the globe all the time. So we've tried to work with other parts of the business, the QHSE, so the organization, for example, who are often, in the production areas or out, you could say, in the field, work with internal audit, for example, are also often out there. So try to extend the reach, you could say, of the function of the practices throughout other parts of the business, because it is a big undertaking to work with the human rights practices at that level, as the CSRDD is foreseeing.
Yeah, and that kind of ties in also to another question that is here on the list, and this is, does this change the relationship between sustainability and compliance at the end of the day, and the legal function also? So do you foresee, that there will be much closer need for alignment between the sustainability team and the compliance legal function, given these new regulations? Is this something that we might see?
I think that's a good question, because I think that's next up. Right now, we have many companies have been working with alignment with the finance function, and now we are looking broader than that to the legal teams, also maybe the internal audit teams, who are looking very much at risk around in the business. What role does sustainability risk play, and should that also be integrated there? I think, however, the legal teams, they will, of course, looking at what is legally required and what is the compliance role, whereas it is the sustainability team that adds the business value. I think that is very much the distinction. So the competitive edge does not come out of compliance. Compliance is about, of course, living up to the law and the spirit of the law, but of course getting your house in order, and out of that comes a lot of, you could say, good risk management, right? But the opportunity part and the competitive edge of it, that comes out of group sustainability team working together with the business, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of the questions here also circle quite a lot around the leadership, the leadership aspect. And for instance, one question by Deborah is, do you think that the senior leaders all need to take responsibility for reporting as part of increasing knowledge and accountability around this? Or is this maybe, you know, just in the end, the CFO and the CSO? So where do you see this? What should be the level of knowledge with regard to that senior leaders have with regard to sustainability reporting?
Oh, it's a great question. I mean, sustainability is one of the greatest leadership challenges of our time, right? And it's a super exciting leadership challenge. And you need to use all the tools in the leadership toolbox to make that transformation and change happen. I don't think all leaders need to be aware of the reporting requirements. I think that's too much to ask. But I do think that all leaders in a company, and hopefully also all employees, but definitely the leaders, need to have an understanding of the sustainability topic, of the company commitments, of what it can drive of business value generically, but then very much take responsibility for their area. So translate and be curious and interested, try to arrive at a knowledge level where you can look at your own area and your own function and say, okay, what is then my responsibility within this area that I'm responsible for, whether that's a part of IT or a part of procurement or where it is. So, and that requires, of course, knowledge, understanding, and leadership skills, interests, for you to be able to make that translation from more generic, you know, sustainability understanding into. But I don't think it is for all leaders to understand the reporting requirements, because I think it is a specialist field. But they need to feel accountable for it, because a lot of data will have to come out of their practices, right? So they need to be able to understand it enough for them to appoint to someone and say, this is the person who will give you the data for the indicators that you need, and then will feed into assurance, etc.
Yeah. And I must say, I'm fully with you here. I mean, we don't need all C-level executives to know in depth about these kind of new data points. But I think what you need as a leader in the future is, when you open an annual report, you need to understand what does it mean if you have whatever 15 or 20% capex aligned with the taxonomy. So you need to have an understanding there whenever you read these documents, whenever you talk to investors, because they will ask also these questions, right? I mean, this is particularly the taxonomy is a great benchmarking tool, and in that sense, future leaders, while they don't need to know the nitty-gritty little details of reporting and the technical details, they need to have an understanding of the language that is developing right now around this. We also have and maybe, you know, we talk quite a bit about reporting here, and reporting in a sense it's interesting because it's reactive, right? You always look back. And Neil is asking, what strategies are you looking at to translate the insights from data reporting into tangible action? So kind of I think what he's asking for is what is the link, you know, between what you report and how does it guide your future actions at Ørsted?
Yeah. Oh, and that's excellent and a question, because it's back to the leading and lacking indicators that you have to work with. Because of course you have your, as you say, your data set and your reporting that shows you the progress, but that needs to be paired with a credible and tangible roadmaps towards the different goals that you have set up for yourself. And those roadmaps need to be, of course, with the 2030 or 2040 target, whatever you've set up. But I think what is extremely important and what we can see at the moment is that you have broken those roadmaps down into 2 year, maybe 2 to 3 year plans. Because if not, decisions will just keep on being postponed again and again, and then it's 2030, and then it's 2032, and 2035, 2030, and nothing will ever happen. And if you are to drive that transformation, you need to have it broken down. And so what do we have to achieve this year and next year? Tick. And that needs to kind of add up to the in a credible manner towards the goal. And to me, that the information into that for information flow that you need is of course comes from the reporting, also comes from what other companies are doing, what's happening, the legal environment, etc. But a very important information link or flow comes from the reporting. And I hope, and also as I said before, as we move towards 2030 onwards, the discussions will become more heated, and there the reporting will be it will be a super important tool, because I think that in most companies it will show that progress is not happening as quickly as we would have liked, and that is just not, it's never good to have discussion based on feelings and what you think is happening. If you got the hard data showing, you can see here, this is where we are. If we prolong the trajectory out, and you will see that we will not arrive there in time. And that just creates different discussions. And also back to our discussion around the board. If you don't have knowledge enough in a board or in a top management, there's nothing better than data to put that on the table. Because data numbers, you don't have to be so sustainability savvy to see, we're here, we would like to go here. If we just prolong, keep on doing the same, we will not hit our target. Everyone understands that. So I think it will be extremely important. I don't think all companies are there in a structured manner to have those discussions tabled at the same time, but it's important.
Yeah. I agree, and I think what you're saying, Ingrid, is spot on, and it's so important, right? That we need intermediate targets. We need more short-term targets rather than commitments towards 2040, 2050. Because also, as you say, the problems are urgent. For some of the problems, we know we need action now. Look at carbon. There's a time value to carbon. You can discount carbon, and if you do this, you actually realize that we need action now, because if we act in 2040, it will be more or less too late. And then we might mathematically be able to achieve net zero, but we will not meet the temperature goal. And I see in Ingrid's background there, COP 2.8 degree question mark, right? This is where we might end up, right? If we don't take action. Maybe one last question, Tobias, if I may. Because there was one question around leading by example and by Ricardo, and I think this is a great question. And of course, is this something where we need to push a little bit more towards leaders to kind of tell them, look, I mean, you need to lead by example, as you do in other areas of leadership, right? Where we kind of say, I mean, this is something where we need your real life commitment, not just the tone from the top, but where we need your actions, your personal actions also, to make it credible.
It's an excellent question, because it's all about integrity, right? That you cannot have big targets, commitments, and then do something completely different. I think it goes a lot for companies that if you have a strong sustainability agenda, employees have to see it also when they go to work. You cannot come to work and have paper waste and plastic bottles and all that. I think a lot of companies have worked on that, but a lot can still be done. So you need to have that. And then you could take it, as I understand the question from Ricardo, one step further. How do you exemplify that as a leader? What do you then need to do? And I think that would be very individual, because then you quickly get into the discussions around, of course, your personal responsibility. Do you take a flight? Do you take the train? Are you a vegetarian or not, etc. I think it would be difficult to set, policies as Spanish that. I think that's the wrong way to go. I think it's up to each leader to find out what is the highest impact that I can make as a leader. And do I want to combine that with my personal life, or do I see, as a leader in this time, and I think everyone on this call has the opportunity to make a difference. As you said, Andreas, we are in a difficult time, and everyone has to find out what is the way to do that. Is it to raise your voice? Is it to work within sustainability? Is it to write to the newspaper, be part of political activism, part of an NGO, or is it also personal life choices? But I think it's important reflections, because sustainability leadership is not just about what you do, it's also about who you are and how you're role modeling yourself.
And I think that was a very beautiful note to end this discussion on, but conscious of time, I have to resume my hosting responsibilities here. You made my hosting life very, very easy. Thank you so much for that discussion. I think that was extremely interesting. Thank you so much, Ingrid. Thank you, Andreas, for taking the time. I just have to advertise our next very early morning executive morning brief, and then we'll let you all go. Next executive morning brief will be already at 8 o'clock on April 16th. We will host it as part of the Green Business Forum at CBS, Copenhagen Business School. So you'll be able to attend both live and online as we do today. We got one further session coming up in June regarding executive sustainable leadership, where we will have Mads Øvlesen, former CEO and chair of Novo Nordisk, join us for a discussion on, again, executive sustainable leadership. Again, conscious of time, thank you so much, Andreas. Thank you so much, Ingrid. Thank you to all of you for all your good questions. Hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot to everybody. Thanks to Ingrid.
Thank
Really
you.
great
Have a nice
discussion.
day. Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.